Hey fam, what's up? Shavuot is approaching, Shavuot, which is a holiday, a festival that has come to be associated with the giving of Torah. So I want to talk some about Torah, but I want to talk about it through the way that I like to talk about it, which is through source critical analysis of the literature, an academic and sort of secular way to try to understand the composition of Torah. So that's what I want to talk about right now is the documentary hypothesis. Now, this is going to be the first video of a few that I make on this because this is like near and dear to my heart. I love this theory, this hypothesis. I love to study it. I love to locate the different sources within Torah when reading Torah. The last video that I made was just a quick video about Jewish Currents podcast On the Nose about one of their episodes that went up on June 6th, and they're talking about sort of the incorporation of Parsha commentary in the regular Shabbat email from Jewish Currents, which is a historically secular publication. Does this detract from the heritage of secularism that is at the heart of Jewish Currents by incorporating Parsha? You can listen to the debate about that. Just go to my last video, and it's episode 76, the On the Nose podcast. But I am somebody who does secular Torah commentary on a blog. I don't pretend I'm not licensed or credentialed. I've got some education formally in this, but a whole lot of lay study. That's kind of where I come to this. So because Shavuot's approaching and that's associated with Torah, because I just made that video about the episode, let me just talk about the documentary hypothesis, and then I'll make some additional videos about this, sharing some of my favorite resources. I'm by my bookshelf. So that's why I'll share some of my favorite resources in some upcoming videos. Documentary hypothesis classically is organized around four major document sources in the composition of the Torah. The Torah is the T in Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible, the first 5 books of the Christian Old Testament, known as the books of Moses, or the Pentateuch, or some other names for Torah. Okay, Torah also has a more expansive definition within Jewish usage. Torah meaning instruction or law or mitzvot. There are different ways to understand Torah, but in this video, I just mean to be talking about those 5 books, the books of Moses, right, purportedly. That does have kind of a tradition of Mosaic authorship, that God dictated the Torah to Moses. Moses recorded it, except for the last part, because it's about Moses' own death. So some people said, well, Moses had to write about his own death. Other people say, well, Moses was handing things over to Joshua, so it was Joshua who wrote about that very last part. At any rate, I don't go by those religious interpretations. I think there's still a lot of meaning making and value to studying, which is why I study it. But I think that this is human authored source documents. Those documents are the Yahwist or J source, the Elohist or the E source, the P, the priestly source, the D, the Deuteronomistic literature, and then R for redactor and editor that stitched all of this together. So it's J and E and D and P and the R redactor. So the 4 sources and a redactor. That's the traditional kind of view of the documentary hypothesis. Now, this is interesting because each of those sources, we can say more about them. And I'm optimistic that we can isolate all of those sources. The person who popularized this is Richard Elliott Friedman. I'll do more resources in another video. But who wrote the Bible? This is like probably the most popular kind of accessible version of the documentary hypothesis. It's a great book. Just if you're, I'm going to make a weird statement, but I think all Jews should read this book. I think it teaches us to approach some of our core literature with kind of eyes wide open from a secular or at least academic standpoint. Okay, so the J and the E sources, these represent kind of an anthropomorphic quality of the Holy One, of God. The characterization of God in the J and E sources is very narrative, very kind of storytelling in a sense. It has this emotional God, almost capricious God, a vengeful God sometimes, also compassionate and forgiving, but that sort of very human anthropomorphic God walking in the garden in one of the Genesis creation accounts. There are 2 creation accounts in Genesis, and God walking in the garden. That very anthropomorphic is associated with the J and the E sources. Now, we can say more about J and E if you think we can isolate them. The E or Elohist source really associated with northern Israel, And the J or Yahweh source is typically associated with the southern kingdom, with Judah. And so there's, if you think you can isolate them, there's some interesting stuff to say. The E, if it's associated with the northern kingdom, there's also very friendly to Moses on the E source, whereas the J source really prizes Aaron, the purported brother of Moses. So from you get the Aaronid priestly line, the Levitical tribe line, etc. That's like J, Yahweh's Judah, southern kingdom. E is Moses, multiple places of sacrifice, friendlier to Moses than to Aaron. That's some of the E stuff. But overall, J and E are pre-priestly sources that have an anthropomorphic God. Now, the P source, the priestly source, you have this like ruler of the universe sort of a conception of the Holy One. So in in Genesis 1, when God began to create the heavens and the earth, so this huge separating the lightness from the dark, and you've got like this big cosmological conception of the Holy One. That's a signature of the P account. The priestly account also is very concerned with the construction of the tabernacle, for example. How many cubits should the damn thing be made of? You know what I mean? What resources do you need to build the thing? How do you properly carry out the sacrifices? Also, like wandering in the wilderness, when you go and the manna comes, and on Shabbat you get a double portion. So this concern about Shabbat and rite and ritual and mitzvot, that's very characteristic of the P source. That's a priestly material, okay? It makes sense, right? Serves the priests. That's what it's about. That's the focus, okay? So pre-priestly, J and E, anthropomorphic, emotional, Holy One. P, priestly, transcendent, cosmological, a lot of rite and ritual and mitzvot and obsession with tabernacle and temple practices, etc. So that's J, E, and P. On the D source, you have a retributive justice kind of a thing. If you do good stuff happens. If you do bad, you're going to get punished, right? So that's really signature of that D account. And then R, the redactor, we can see the redactor kind of at work stitching some of the stories together. So that's the documentary hypothesis. That's a way that I like to approach studying Torah from this human-authored perspective that says, okay, let's try to understand the dates of composition for all of these different sources. We can do that with degrees of success. All of this is theoretical reconstruction, right? So we know that we're not going to recover an original manuscript that's going to be signed like sincerely the author of the Yahweh source. You know what I mean? So there is a kind of a theoretical academic reconstruction that's happening. That's 7.5 minutes. That's plenty for now. That's documentary hypothesis at like an intro level from a non-scholar, just a lay person. But I'll talk more about it over the next couple of days.